Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our March the 7th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. From the original edition, lesson 66, My happiness and my function are one. Boy, is this ever a wonderful awakening lesson. My happiness and my function are one. He's going to give us some really clear cause and effect relationships and some really a wonderful idea, or some ideas to think about here. Not that he doesn't do that every day. You have surely noticed an emphasis throughout our recent lessons on the connection between fulfilling your function and achieving happiness. This is because you do not really see the connection. Yet there is more than just a connection between them. They are the same. Their forms are different, but their content is completely one. The ego does constant battle with the Holy Spirit on the fundamental question of what your function is. So does it do constant battle with the Holy Spirit about what your happiness is. It is not a two-way battle. The ego attacks, and the Holy Spirit does not respond. He knows what your function is. He knows that it is your happiness. Today we will try to go past this wholly meaningless battle and arrive at the truth about your function. We will not engage in ceaseless arguments about what it is. We will not become hopelessly involved in defining happiness and determining the means for achieving it. We will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. We will merely be glad that we can find out what truth is. We will merely be glad that we can find out what truth is. Our longer practice period today has as its purpose your acceptance of the fact that not only is there a real connection between the function God gave you and your happiness, but that they are actually identical. God gives you only happiness. Therefore, the function He gave you must be happiness, even if it appears different. Today's exercises are an attempt to go beyond these differences in appearance and recognize a common content where it exists in truth. Begin the 10 to 15 minute practice period by reviewing these thoughts. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Let's read those 3 sentences again. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Try to see the logic in this sequence, even if you do not yet accept the conclusion. The conclusion, therefore, my function must be happiness. It is only if the first 2 thoughts are wrong, God gives me only happiness and He has given my function to me. It is only if the first 2 thoughts are wrong that the conclusion could be false. Let us then think about the premises for a while as we are practicing. The first premise is that God gives you only happiness. Well, this could be false, of course, but in order to be false, it is necessary to define God as something He is not. Love cannot be evil, and what is not happiness is evil. God cannot give what He does not have, and He cannot have what He is not. Unless God gives you only happiness, He must be evil, which He clearly isn't. And it is this definition of Him which you are believing if you do not accept the first premise. Wow. The second premise is that God has given you your function. We've seen that there are only 2 parts of your mind. One is ruled by the ego and is made up of illusions. The other is the home of the Holy Spirit where truth abides. There are no other guides but these to choose between, and no other outcomes possible as a result of your choice, but the fear which the ego always engenders and the love which the Holy Spirit always offers to replace it. That's kind of a long sentence. Listen to it one more time. There are no other guides but these to choose between, the ego and the Holy Spirit. And no other outcomes possible as a result of your choice. And here's the 2 choices. The choice, but the fear which the ego always engenders, and the love which the Holy Spirit always offers to replace it. Love or fear. One's from the ego, one's from the Holy Spirit. Thus it must be that your function is established by God through His voice and is made by the ego which you have made to replace Him. Let's read that again. Thus it must be that your function is established by God through His voice, or is made by the ego which you have made to replace Him. Which is true. Unless God gave your function to you, it must be the gift of the ego. Does the ego really have gifts to give, being itself an illusion and offering only the illusion of gifts? Think about this during the longer practice period today. Think also about the many forms which the illusion of your function has taken in your mind, and the many ways in which you tried to find salvation under the ego's guidance. Did you find it? Were you happy? Same question, really. Did they bring you peace? We need great honesty here. We need great honesty here. Remember the outcomes fairly, and consider also whether it was ever reasonable to expect happiness from anything the ego ever proposed. Yet the ego is the only alternative to the Holy Spirit's voice. You will listen to madness or hear the truth. Try to make this choice as you think about the premises on which our conclusion rests. We can share in this conclusion, but in no other, for God Himself shares it with us. Today's idea is another giant stride in the perception of the same as the same and the different is different. On one side stand all illusions, and all truth stands on the other. Let me try to get that. On one side stands all illusion, on the ego side. All truth stands on the other, in the Holy Spirit's side. Let us try today to realize that only truth is true. and then in our shorter practice periods, which would be most helpful today if undertaken twice an hour, this form of the application is suggested. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. It will not take more than a minute and probably less to repeat these words slowly and think about them a little while you say them. My happiness and my function are one because God gave me both. That's what we're going to say on the hour throughout the day, or even more often, as much as you often as you want. And sometimes close your eyes, and sometimes when you can't, just say it and think about it. Then in our longer 10 to 15 minute period of practice that you want to do at least once a day, maybe twice, maybe more, but at least once, you're going to think about this set of cause and effect relationships. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Okay, isn't that beautiful? Really, really get that and understand it. There's so much power there. And just to think that our day-to-day function can be happiness. And that's what it was intended to be. That's what we are to do. Practice the way of reaching that by the practice of atonement, of forgiveness, of seeing the Christ in yourself and your brothers and sisters. My happiness and my function are one. Of course, I didn't really encourage you to write it down on a card. I wrote my happiness and my function are one pretty big on the card, and then in smaller print, God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. And then down at the bottom of the card, I wrote, my happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. And I just keep that in my pocket and pull it out. If I want to do a longer meditation, I've got the basic wherewithal, I can do it. And if I just want to do a short one and I can't quite remember the right words to use or some renditioning of those words, you don't have to use the exact words, but it sure makes it easy for me anyway. I like to just kind of use the words he's using and then think of associated ideas, which kind of changes the words. Okay, let's go take a look back in our text reading. We're going to finish in chapter 14. We are in it's Bringing Illusions to Truth under the section 4, Perception Without Deceit. We're ready for paragraph 34. Let's start in about the middle of 32 at banish not power from your mind. And we'll start right there. Banish not power from your mind, but let all that would hide your glory be brought to the judgment of the Holy Spirit, and there undone. Whom he would save for glory is saved for it. He has promised the Father that through him you would be released from littleness to glory. To what he promised God, he is wholly faithful, for he shared with God the promise that was given him to share with you. And paragraph 33, he shares it still for you. Everything that promises otherwise, great or small, however much or little valued, he will replace with the one promise given unto him to lay upon the altar to your Father and his Son. No altar stands to God without his Son, and nothing brought there that is not equally worthy of both, but will be replaced by gifts wholly acceptable to Father and to Son. Can you offer guilt to God? You cannot then offer it to his Son, for they are not apart, and gifts to one are offered to the other. How can you remember how James said in the Bible? How can you say you love your brother whom you have not seen if you can't love, or how can you say that you love God whom you have not seen if you don't love your brother whom you have seen? And this is the same idea here. We don't want to offer guilt to our brothers and sisters, because that'd be offering it to God, because God and his creation are one, the holy oneness. Okay, before we take off on paragraph 34, let me just show you what I've got here in the way of a potato. I've got a couple of these things that I'm getting ready to plant. I had a couple of notes on the back of my card, and what did I do? Oh, well, I got my card up here. Here we go. So, I wanted to tell you about these red Nolan potatoes. They were released in 1957. Their predecessor really was called just the Nolan. They've probably been made redder through the years, I don't know. But I'm just going to show you the inside of them is a white flesh. See how the outside, I'm cutting it way down, I'm sorry. I'm trying to show you what you cut them open. Now that one had a little bit of decay, but it's a seed potato, not going to hurt a thing. See how it's white fleshed, pink exterior. Make sure you got a few eyes in each side. That's about the right size you'd want to let scab over and plant. And we'll do the same thing to this one, just as you kind of get out. See how there's nice eyes. There's a little eye right here and here. There's these little eyes. I usually pick the ones that are growing the best and cut them that way. So I'd probably just take this one and cut it right here. And then that's about the size you want for your seed potatoes, and you just let them dry. Of the red Nolans, they're a king for boiling. We're making potato salads and you know, just for boiled potatoes, you know, that you want to season a little bit, just eat them boiled. They're ideal. I think they're a little smaller generally. It may just be the way people grow them, but you make a nice little new potato, and they grow fast. They're only 70 day, I think. So 8 weeks after you plant them, and plant them here in the middle of March. You could probably warm as things are getting this year. You could probably plant them right now. Probably be fine. But anyway, March 15th is normal, or, you know, like I told you the other day. What else about these things? Anything else interesting? They were developed in North Dakota at it just says at North Dakota Agricultural College. So, okay, let's go take a look in paragraph 34. You know not God because you know not this. And what is it you don't know? That last sentence we will read it again. Can you offer guilt to God? You cannot then offer it to his Son, for they are not apart, and gifts to one are offered to the other. You know not God because you know not this, and yet you do know God, and also this. All this is safe within you where the Holy Spirit shines. He shines not in division, but in the meeting place where God, united with his Son, speaks to his Son through him. Communication between what cannot be divided cannot cease. The holy meeting place of the unseparated Father and his Son lies in the Holy Spirit and in you. All interference in the communication that God himself wills with his Son is quite impossible here. Unbroken and uninterrupted love flows constantly between the Father and the Son, as both would have it be, and so it is. 35. Let your mind wander not through darkened corridors away from light's center. You may choose to lead yourselves astray, but you can only be brought together by the guide appointed for you. He will surely lead you to where God and His Son await your recognition. They are joined in giving you the gift of oneness, before which all separation vanishes. Whoa, listen. They are joined. And let's read that again. Let your minds wander not through darkened corridors away from light's center. You may choose to lead yourselves astray, but you can only be brought together by the guide, the Holy Spirit, appointed you. He will surely lead you to where God and His Son await your recognition. They are joined in giving you the gift of oneness, the Father and the Son, you and God, you and your brother, the gift of oneness, before which all separation vanishes. So the Holy Spirit's going to guide us to that perception of the real world where we're united in only oneness and holiness. The promise of our oneness is realized. Unite with what you are. You cannot join with anything except reality. God's glory and His Son's belong to you in truth. They have no opposite, and nothing else can you bestow upon yourselves. There is no substitution for truth, and truth will make this plain to you as you are brought into the place where you must meet with truth, and there you must be led through gentle understanding which can lead you nowhere else. Where God is, there are you. Where God is, there are you. Such is the truth. Nothing can change the knowledge given you by God into unknowingness. Everything God created knows its Creator, for this is how creation is accomplished by the Creator and by His creations. And in the holy meeting place are joined the Father and His creations, and the creations of His Son with them together. Well, the Father creates, the Son creates, and we're all in this as one. The oneness. There is one link which joins them all together, holding them in the oneness out of which creation happens. Wow, the voice for the Spirit. The holy pneumo, I've heard it called. The link with which the Father joins Himself to those He gives the power to create like Him can never be dissolved. Let's read that again. The link with which the Father joins Himself to those He gives the power to create like Him can never be dissolved. Heaven itself is union with all of creation and with its one Creator, and heaven remains the will of God for you. Lay no gifts other than this upon your altars, for nothing can coexist beside it. Let's listen to that again. Heaven itself is union with all of creation. Heaven itself is union with all creation and with its one Creator, and heaven remains the will of God for you. Lay no gift other than this upon your altar, for nothing can coexist beside it. Here your meager offerings are brought together with the gift of God, and only what is worthy of the Father will be accepted by the Son, for whom it was intended. To whom God gives Himself, He is given. Your little gifts will vanish on the altar where He has placed His own. Your little gift is your willingness to accept the atonement for yourself. To basically today, your willingness to accept, how does it say it here again? My happiness and my function are one. So just that's your little part, is just to accept the truth. And then let the Holy Spirit prove it out and play it out and make your world blessed and shine and lead you to knowledge and to the real world. And then, so be sure to do your 10 to 15 minute practice period today. And 2 or 3 is fine. Remember, He wants to set a specific time and try to stick to it, whether it's morning or evening or whatever you find best for you. But mainly it's the time you do it, and He wants just to kind of try to develop a little consistency around that particular time. And then the last paragraph or 2 of our reading today, under my happiness and my function are one. I want you to particularly remember when we're throughout the day and in our longer meditation, let us try today to realize that only the truth is true. In the shorter practice periods, which would be most helpful today if undertaken twice an hour, this form of application is suggested. My happiness and my function are one because God gave me both. Every half hour, twice an hour, say that to yourself, He's saying. It will not take more than a minute, and probably less, to repeat these words slowly and think about them a little while you say them. Okay, isn't that something? That's my happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's see if we can settle into this idea that my happiness and my purpose for living, my function here, is the same. So God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Let us try today to realize that only the truth is true. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both.